Doubtless hear ye, friends and loved ones. We are gathered here today in celebration of holy matrimony between the brave and gallant Sir Cucumber and the beautiful Princess Tomato in the Salad Kingdom. Alright, so this is definitely a bit outside my usual wheelhouse, isn't it? But hey, Persona 5 Royal is coming out in just a few weeks, and I wanted to do something with a dash of regality to it. King's Quest? Little King Story? Long Live the Queen? Yeah, in hindsight, those probably would have been good choices, but hey, I'm already invested in this. We're playing Princess Tomato in the Salad Kingdom, or is it Princess Tomato in Salad Kingdom? I'm honestly not sure. The game's box and the Wii say The Salad Kingdom, but the in-game title screen and credits omit the, so I don't have an ending for this sentence. The game was developed by Hudson Soft, and was originally released for Japanese PCs back in 1984. I don't know a lot about the original PC version, other than it used a more traditional text parser system, and had an incredibly different art style with these surrealist MS Paint-style doodles. The story itself was also a bit different because the original version had things like Strawberry Jesus and a bit more focus on Princess Tomato's tomatoes. But the game eventually got redone and revamped for the Famicom in 1988 and was brought to North America in 1991. The version you're seeing right now is actually being played on my Wii U, as the game was re-released in America in 2010 for the Wii Shop channel. Okay, I really need to stop doing that. The game was released on the eShop for the 3DS and Wii U as well, but sadly only in Japan. So with the Wii Shop channel now being completely dead, the only legitimate way to play the game these days is to have a physical cartridge and yeesh, have fun with those prices. So the game opens up with us being told that King Broccoli of Salad Kingdom was betrayed by his minister Pumpkin, who kidnapped Princess Tomato, stole the turnip emblem, and is now holed up in his castle. If it wasn't already obvious, this is a world fully inhabited by fruit and vegetable people. Except apparently the minister has an army of human beings called farmies that are apparently, like, committing veggie genocide. There's no real explanation for the humans, so I imagine it's more equivalent to a human having an army of trained gorillas. Anyway, if all that weren't bad enough, King Broccoli also died, just for good measure, but before he did, he promised our hero, Sir Cucumber, that if we rescue the princess, we can marry her. But, like, she was kidnapped before this promise was made, and then he died, so when we do save her, she's just gonna have to take our word on this. Okay, so now for the game part. Aside from the obvious visual differences, the gameplay has also changed. Instead of typing in commands, you simply choose from a list of handy-dandy verbs that make up the left and right side of the screen. On the left, you've got traditionally more useful ones like look, take, and use. And on the right are more situational verbs like hit and Percy? What's Percy? Okay, I take it back, I don't want to know more about Percy. And you've even got one for praise. Well, ain't that sweet? I decided early on that I was gonna praise everybody. You won't believe how many puzzles you can solve just by being nice to someone. It's one. You solve one puzzle in this game by using praise. Speaking of praise, you do get some pretty interesting reactions from people when you use it, but wow, a lot of these people do not take compliments very well, and immediately assume we're making fun of them. I never thought I'd feel bad after saying someone has a nice haircut or that they're rocking those boots, but here we are. I think my absolute favorite is this eggplant guard in the final castle that won't even talk to us because he works for our main bad guy, but if you praise him, he asks if we like his mustache. I do like his mustache. It doesn't help us solve any puzzles, but I feel like a true hero because I like to think I made this dude's day. Much as I hate to do this, going back to Percy, he's this little persimmon kid that Sir Cucumber recruits at the start of the game. Since Cucumber is a silent protagonist, Percy acts as our assistant and handles a lot of the talking. He also removes useless items from our inventory at the end of each chapter, and if you pick the Percy verb, he typically acts as sort of a hint system for where you're supposed to go next, but he's generally not that helpful. There's no pointing and clicking in this adventure game, you just look at the on-screen images and use verbs to try and interact with things. It's always a good idea to both look and check pretty much everything you see, and talk to people if they're around. Once you're done in an area, you can use your move option to go check out someplace else. The game is divided up into 8 main chapters, and each chapter has a pretty small map for you to explore, and while it can be a little cryptic at times, there really isn't any way to die or get permanently stuck, at least not as far as I can tell. But now for what makes this game so memorable for me. Based on everything I've told you, Princess Tomato, Sir Cucumber, Salad Kingdom, King Broccoli, adventure game setting, you probably think this is some magical fantasy world, right? Well, no. Chapter 2 literally drops us into this pretty normal Japanese town. It's got an electronics store, a deli, and even a hostess club, like I'm suddenly back in Yakuza 0. And speaking of these hostesses, some of the character designs in this game are really interesting. You've got Old Man Corn, a Southern Peach that doesn't understand how y'all is supposed to work, this lumpy, drunk grape guy, and Miss Eggplant who... wow. Wowee. No! Shut up, Percy! I already have enough fetishes, I don't need to add whatever the food equivalent of a furry is. The game is also loaded with that early 90s style American censorship that I'll admit I just love. Like, in the park we meet this homeless wanderer, who wants us to buy him coffee. When we give him the coffee, he asks us to get him a donut. In the Japanese version, the coffee was cigarettes, and the reason he needed a donut was because it wasn't a donut, but a match. Which wouldn't be weird to find in the Cabaret Club's bathroom trash can, but when it's a donut, suddenly we're pulling a George Costanza over here. I'd also like to mention that Sir Cucumber and Percy aren't on this quest alone. They regularly get help from the Resistance, who, by the way, are like the worst Resistance members ever. Not one of these people knows how to keep their mouths shut. It's not much of a secret resistance if it's one of your go-to conversation topics, alongside the weather and Simpsons quotes.
Dental plan!
Lisa needs braces.
Dental plan!
Lisa needs braces.
Dental plan!
Lisa needs braces.
One of the chapters takes place entirely in the Resistance base, and we meet Princess Tomato's sister, Lisa, who is just a person, for no explained reason, and I love it. This game is the perfect level of just wackiness and absurdity, and it's great. Like, Sir Cucumber is a knight, but we don't get a sword. And there's a machine gun that shoots peas, but we don't get that either. All we really need is a nut bomb. Which is great, because we're gonna need to bust a nut. We're gonna need to bust a nut to make a banana explode. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't. Okay. We need to use the nut bomb to kill this giant multi-headed banana monster that I think is actually supposed to be in reference to Yamata no Orochi. The only time the game breaks away from the more traditional adventure game style are a few points in the story where you enter these first-person dungeon-crawling mazes where pretty much everything looks exactly the same. Luckily, very close to the beginning of the first one of these, you can pick up a compass that will at least tell you what direction you're facing, but yeah. Good luck if you don't get it, because this is something you can miss out on, and I can't imagine trying to do these without it. There are also segments where you'll have to fight your way out, and fights in this game are interesting. You play these fast-paced games of rock, paper, scissors, and if you win that, you'll have to guess which direction your opponent is going to look. But if they beat you, they try to guess where you're going to look, and that gets you points, I guess. A few of these are easier because they have tells, like they'll always pick paper, or always look to the left or something. But generally speaking, you'll just be hitting directional buttons and hoping for the best until it's over. Eventually, we activate a powerful mech weapon called the Dice-O-Matic and fight Minister Pumpkin in his giant mech suit, which I've gotta say is a lot less exciting than it sounds since, again, we're just playing rock, paper, scissors here. Also, sadly, the game doesn't get added to my collection of games with giant robots as the final boss, because this isn't the final boss. I just wanted to talk about it and remind you all that an NES game called Princess Tomato in the Salad Kingdom has a giant robot rock, paper, scissors fight in it. The final main chapter of the game has you exploring the castle, and it's probably the biggest area in the entire story. And there's a lot to do here. You have to get this caterpillar from some prisoners, we get to meet our future bride face to face for the first time, and we even get to peep in on this orange girl in the shower. And yes, you have to do this. You don't have to praise her, but I did anyway. That's fair. Eventually, we come face to face with Minister Pumpkin without giant mech suits between us, and it's the fight of the century. I mean, it's more rock, paper, scissors, but there's actually a trick to this one. See, the Minister has a pattern that he uses on loop, and you can actually learn this pattern by paying attention to those prisoners. If you know how to counter that pattern, it's actually impossible to lose this fight. So the day is saved, and we have a great big festival where everyone is invited until Minister Pumpkin's son, Pumpkin Jr., shows up and tries to kidnap Princess Tomato again. Luckily, we know how to stop him, with rock, paper, scissors. This is actually one of the harder ones in the game because there is no pattern here, it's just completely random. You just have to hope you guess correctly more than he does. But we eventually beat him, throw a caterpillar at him for good measure, and then the day is saved for real this time. Our brave hero marries the princess while Percy creepily watches, and then the credits roll. Princess Tomato in the Salad Kingdom stands out to me because it's so incredibly unique. I don't think I've ever played a game like this. You think you're gonna get a standard fantasy setting, but you quickly find yourself grabbing aspirin from the pharmacy, breaking out of prison, and yeah, fighting giant robots. It's a wacky world that I had a great time exploring, and the system it uses is intuitive and mostly easy enough to explore. I think my only real complaint is the game has not really moon logic, as none of the puzzles seem to have super crazy solutions, but so many of the puzzles are solved by having to perform the same action multiple times, when you might think to try something else after it doesn't work the first or second time. And sometimes you can only solve a puzzle after you leave an area and come back, but it may be unclear what constitutes as leaving. Like, I knew how to solve this puzzle with Princess Tomato, but it wouldn't let me solve it until I did something that involved leaving the room and coming back. I'm not sure what sequence of movements eventually let me progress, but it did eventually work. That, and like I kinda mentioned earlier, some puzzles require you to use these verbs you probably wouldn't think to use. Only one puzzle in the game requires you to use praise, and there are even a few moments where you have to pick Percy, which threw me off because by this stage I was used to Percy just being a hint system, not an actual mechanic. But I love the wacky world and charming characters of Princess Tomato. I actually bought this game on a total whim because I had some leftover Wii Shop points and could pick up an NES game. I remember asking myself what I should buy. A classic like Mario Bros. 3? A slightly forgotten title like Star Tropics? Nah, said I, how about Princess Tomato in the Salad Kingdom? And you know what? I'm really glad I did. Especially after seeing the cost of those physical copies. Yeesh. Unfortunately, very little was ever really done with this world beyond the original title. There was a mobile port based on the Famicom version that was released in Japan in 2004 that honestly looks pretty good. And then Princess Tomato got a Bomber Sona that was added into Super Bomberman R, and that's not really how I expected to end this video, but here we are.
My father always said it wasn't good to be stubborn.
Okay. Bye.